Hello, everyone. Welcome to Las Vegas. Thanks for attending our session here on the first day of MMS. My name's Charlie Satterfield. I'm joined by Jim Livingston, and we're going to talk a little bit today about getting to the System Center data center stack, specifically System Center 2012. First, we're going to talk a little bit about MPSD. Both Jim and myself work in this division. It's the Management Platform and Service Delivery Group. We are part of the MSD product group, but we are an operations team that is part of that product group. So we actually take their latest and greatest code and are running that so that when it finally gets to you, it's a much more polished product, and you're not hitting some of the issues that we discover on our first installations and configs. We're going to talk a little bit about our current stack challenges, and then how we went about implementing System Center 2012 in our environment. Then we'll talk a little bit about at least two of the pillars that System Center 2012 is targeting: infrastructure management and service delivery and automation. And we'll review our experience and go over what's next for our own group in terms of our service offering, leveraging System Center 2012. And there will be some time for questions at the end of the session. First, about MPSD, I told you a little bit about us. Our team specifically is the Data Center Monitoring and Management team, and we're responsible for monitoring some of Microsoft's largest external properties. We monitor and manage about 7,000 servers, at least 10 Azure-hosted services. We're spread across the globe in 10 different data centers and across 6 different domains, some of which are trusted, some are untrusted. All up, we generate about 2,800 plus Operations Manager alerts a day and a similar amount of Service Manager incidents each and every day. Now, who are our customers? Our customers are Microsoft.com, Windows Update, MSDN, and TechNet. We have several other customers that are specific to the MSD product group, but these are some of the largest ones that we monitor, and you can imagine if their monitoring isn't working or they're not getting escalations in a timely manner, they definitely scream. Now a little bit about our team structure. I put this slide in because I typically get a lot of process questions. How do you guys operate? What's your sort of format? We've got a Tier 1 team that handles issue escalation. It's about 38 vendors, and it's spread between Redmond and Hyderabad, India. We do that for a follow the sun to make sure that we've always got Tier 1 folks there that can try and remediate or escalate an issue that comes through Operations Manager to Service Manager. Specific within our team, we've got a Tier 2 team that's staffed by 5 vendors. It's also 24/7. These folks do a lot of issue remediation within our own servers. They also do a lot of the run state service request fulfillment and operations. We then have a Tier 3/4 team that's comprised of full-time engineers, and these engineers are typically focused on looking at our forward-looking service offerings and working with some of our customers to make sure that they're getting the best service possible with their MPs. Lastly, we've got Jim and myself as program managers and a service manager, and we're dedicated to working on projects to make sure that we're rolling out successfully each of our new service offerings and products within those, and then engaging with our customers to ensure that they're getting a quality experience. A little bit about our physical stack that we currently have. We're using System Center Operations Manager 2007 R2 and Service Manager 2010. We're spread between 2 primary data centers that we have some failover going between our databases. And then we're communicating with our agents in both those data centers, as well as the rest of the data centers that we have reach into. We use a variety of methods for communication of agents. Some are reporting directly to management servers, and others are reporting through gateways, especially when we're trying to authenticate between an untrusted domain. On the agent count list, we're at about 5,000 agents that are reporting through a single management group that's shared by our customer base. We've got about 13 gateways, 6 management servers, and then, as you can see on the service manager side, we actually support a larger number of servers, about 7,000 servers, and this is due to some dedicated operation manager instances that plug into our service manager instance. So what are some of our challenges? Well, we've got a few. Single point of failure with the operation manager RMS instance has been a big one. We've got some disaster recovery challenges with how we've architected our own deployment. Management pack development, and then we've had some agent health issues with the Operation Manager 2007 R2 platform. On the service manager side, we really didn't have a concept of SRs. We're looking at, it was totally IR based, and we ended up having to develop a custom solution to enable that on our side. So it's important to note that some of these are product challenges and some are just due to our implementation. So getting to System Center 2012 as a service. So this slide describes the 3 pillars that System Center 2012 data center stack it really offers. And as you move from the far right to the left, typically you're in a much more mature business model, and your processes are more robust, and you've introduced a lot more automation. So where are we right now? Today, we're leveraging Operations Manager and Service Manager. We're also leveraging Config Manager. Where we're hoping to go, or actually where we are going, includes Orchestrator and Virtual Machine Manager. We're looking to leverage most of the infrastructure management stack and then start working our way into the service delivery and automation and the application management stack. Now, how are we going about implementing System Center 2012? So, do you go ahead and upgrade or do you migrate? This was the question that Jim and I had to struggle with when we were planning out our projects. And really, it depends on a number of factors. Have you recently implemented to that Operations Manager and Service Manager? Are you on new hardware or old hardware? Are you looking for a chance to re-architect your deployment to offer more reliability, failover, and disaster recovery? For us, we chose migration for a couple reasons. Our hardware that we were deployed on was getting up in age. It was nearing the end of its warranty cycle. So it was an opportunity for us to get on some new hardware. It was also an opportunity to make some platform decisions, and we were able to change how we went about deploying things so that we had better reliability and better failover. Also, for us, it allowed for quicker risk mitigation. There is a rollback, especially on the Operations Manager side, but the ability to have an agent multi-homed and simply switch back over to using the old system without losing any data was the best option for us. Lastly, because we have so many of our customers have large numbers of servers that they're managing, trying to get everybody on an all-or-nothing upgrade path was next to impossible. So going the migration route allowed us to cut over a partner at a time when they were ready. And in fact, as of this morning, we've got 7 out of our 9 partners now using System Center 2012 entirely, Operations Manager and Service Manager. And it's been working very well. We've been running in production for over a month and a half now. So how we go about the migration, it's really it's capable because of the Operation Manager dual homing capability, or the agent dual homing capability. We built out our migration stack. We ended up going with VMs for our management servers. We decided to leverage VMs because of the ability to quickly provision new management servers if we needed to. And so this is how we built out our management pool. Our management pool on both on the Operations Manager side is VMs, and our management servers and service catalog servers are all VMs on the Service Manager side. The rest, our databases, are on physical boxes at the moment. Just from a scaling perspective, our databases are usually under a very heavy load. So once we built out our environment, we went ahead and dual-homed, or actually, we upgraded our 2012 agents, and then we dual-homed them to point to the new 2012 gateways. So one of the things you'll notice, we added gateways in a lot of our data centers because we chose to route all agents in 2012 through gateways as opposed to mixing them between management servers and gateways as far as a reporting mechanism. This gives us some better control and more consistent failover strategy. It also, some of the analysis we did showed that the priority of traffic between agents and gateways for management servers, we found that gateways actually received a higher priority of traffic, so we decided to consolidate everything through gateways. So once we multi-homed here, we're now actually getting all traffic from those agents in both our existing production system, 2007 R2 and 2010, and the new 2012 system. Once everything's up and running, we remove the multi-home to our 2007 R2 instance, and now that customer is fully running on 2012. At this point, we start building out our secondary instance, and we're going to have 2 data centers, both running VMs for management servers and physical for SQL, and we'll have that so that we have a consistent failover for gateways as well as our management pools. All up, at the end of it, you'll notice our gateway server count increased greatly, and this was a choice that we made. It was a little bit of an increase in cost, but again, it gave us that consistent failover strategy for those agents and a consistent priority of traffic to those agents. We actually are running with fewer active management servers on the operations manager side. We went from, I believe, about 6 active to 3 active. This is due to a lot of the performance improvements that they've done in the management servers. And so we've experienced no degradation in performance, even though we've cut it in half. And we have those other 3 for failover mechanisms, and we can actually spin up a secondary pool for agentless monitoring if we wanted to, until we needed to use it for failover. So a little bit about the infrastructure management and what we found to be so beneficial on the 2012 stack. The high availability, as far as the immediate benefits, the removal of the RMS role, the root management server from Operations Manager, was a tremendous benefit for us in moving to 2012. We finally have good high reliability using a management pool. We've got 3 servers in that management pool that share the config service role. That's federated out. And there's been performance improvements in that config service role as well. That was another benefit of removing the RMS role. They took the opportunity to rethink and re-architect some of those services. So you see some better performance there. We have agent gateway and management server failover. So we're able to build into the agents so that they know their primary and secondary management servers as well as gateways, so that if they lose connections with those, they'll immediately try their secondary. Next was the ability to run on commodity hardware and VMs. Removing that RMS role was what lit this up. Being able to spread the load over VMs is a great benefit, other than having to try and build out a very high-end server just for that RMS role. And then lastly, agent performance and health. We've seen a noticeable improvement in agent health enrolling to the 2012 Operations Manager agent. We regularly would try and reach about 95% agent health in 2007 R2. And once we rolled out 2012, we're consistently seeing about 99% agent health, which is a great improvement over what we had. As far as our migration details, we imported all our MPs into our management pool, and all of them imported successfully. They did some tremendous work with backwards compatibility in 2012, and this has really led to a very smooth, easy transition into that environment. On our agents, we performed installs from both the console and using the MSI. We wrote a little bit of PowerShell to go out and push agents out, and we're able to hand that off to some customers that were more comfortable installing those agents themselves rather than us pushing them from the console. Again, I mentioned we've got automatic failover configurations and improved health there. On the gateways, like I said, we're using those for consistent failover as well as performance. And then on the management servers, we're able to run with fewer management servers due to that performance improvement. And the management pool does really mean high availability. There's no need for clustering of RMS, and it handles load balancing of the agent load within the management pool. So as far as poor health, so they were reporting back as errors. Their agent health status in the console was unhealthy. And we've seen, so we measure things over a monthly basis, and so you may have an agent that goes unhealthy for a day or two and bounces back for whatever reason. But we've seen a much more consistent high number of agents that are healthy instead of being failures. I'm not sure I answered your question. Do you have? Okay. So what are some of the key features that we're looking forward to implementing? APM, Application Performance Monitoring, which was formerly Avocode, has to be one of the biggest ones that we're looking forward to implementing. And we actually, all our customers are beating down our doors today to get access to this. The ability to leverage the IIS MP to do discovery of applications, of .NET web applications, and then to be able to get rich .NET profiling analysis on those is a great advantage with 2012. You no longer need the separate Avocode product. It's all wrapped into one agent. And this really gives the operations staff the ability to go back to the dev team with specific information as far as where failures are occurring in their applications. How many of you out there monitor web apps? Show of hands. How many of you have the dev teams have written MPs for you? All right, much smaller number. So this gives you the ability to gather rich information without having to develop a custom MP. You suddenly are lighting up for a number of applications, very rich alerting as well as performance information with APM. Next is the dashboard reporting. They've made improvements as far as configuring dashboards. It's much easier than it was in 2007 R2. I'm going to show you a demo here in a moment on how to go about creating those dashboards. Next is web app availability monitoring. In 2007 R2, you could use synthetic transactions to go out and test a web app. Unfortunately, you could do that one URL at a time. It does give you powerful ways to actually walk through and test out some functionality. But if you're just looking to test a VIP and a bunch of underlying IPs underneath of it, it's really a little bit painful to configure. With web app availability monitoring, they give you a very easy way to monitor and understand the health of that web app without having to develop a synthetic transaction per unique URL. Next is the Visio MP authoring tool. How many of you author MPs in here? Everybody? Almost. All right. MPs can be challenging to know how to get started, especially if you haven't done them often. The Visio MP authoring tool gives you a very nice way of creating the structure of the MP and some of the base information. It's very easy to use, and then you can export that into an MP that you can go ahead and import into Operations Manager. It's a very, very nice tool. Some of the existing features that we continue to use are the distributed app model and then synthetic transaction monitoring. As far as design considerations, we have some challenges in our implementation because we're a multi-tenant instance. We've got many different customers that we're monitoring, and we can't provide them direct console access for a variety of different reasons. So they're limited in their ability to use some of these. So what we're looking to do, we're actually going to migrate to an instance of Operation Manager per customer. In some cases, it might be several instances of Operation Manager for that partner, so that they can go ahead and light up these features out of the box. So if you look at it, APM, web app availability monitoring, the dashboard creation, all those require access to the console, right? You can use the Visio MP authoring tool to do some web app availability monitoring, but the wizard experience in the console is very easy and allows you to add a bunch of URLs at a time. And so really, unless you have console access, it's not as easy to go ahead and create that on the fly. Any other questions there? No? All right. Well, let's talk a little bit and review web app availability and dashboarding. So with web app availability monitoring, it's a new management pack template within Operations Manager 2012. And it gives you the ability to not only understand whether your app is healthy, but where that app is healthy from. So using Operations Manager PowerShell, you can specify locations for your agents or for your gateways or your management servers, and then be able to pinpoint exactly where your failures are happening, whether those failures are happening in the same data center, in remote data centers, or on end users. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new location. So I'm going to, using the new SCOM location commandlet. So you input a new display name with a longitude and latitude. And give it a moment. I am running this in production, so you may notice a little bit of lag every now and again with the 5,000 agents we have reporting through here. There we go. All right, so it's now registered this location within Operations Manager. So now we need to go ahead and associate this location to either an agent, a gateway, or a management server. In this case, we're going to associate it with a gateway. So I'll go ahead and actually, so I'll go ahead and get that location. I'll go ahead and get this gateway. It's still found using GetSCOM management server. And then I'll associate the location. Oh. All right. Well, I'll come back to that, but I will show you how this looks when you go through the process. So let me go over here. I'll go ahead and add monitoring. I'll select the web app availability monitoring template. I'll give this a name, and I'm actually going to go ahead and test our SM12 service catalog. And let me select the management pack. Okay. Now here I can add URLs and associate a name. So I'm going to go ahead and add this as catalog. This will be my VIP, and this is and then 1. I will also test out the individual web servers behind that so I can understand if there's a failure on an individual box. And if you're copying and pasting out of Excel, you can go ahead and paste a whole list and it'll just populate in here. All right. So next, I need to specify where I'm testing this from. And like I said, you can add agents, gateways, or management servers. I'm going to go ahead and select this gateway that I already have configured, and it's been associated to Seattle, Washington. So I'll add that. I'll click OK. Click Next. Now, this gives me the opportunity to run these tests before I go ahead and save this to understand whether or not I need to make any configuration changes. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to run this test. So at this point, it's going out to that gateway. It's running it from the gateway. And you'll see it came back, and the request succeeded, but the error criteria failed. And the reason for that is the run as account for this probably doesn't have access to that application right now. So if I go ahead and change the configuration, I can go and change the status code failure to 402, so it doesn't fail on auth denied, so I at least understand if the website is up. So now I'll rerun the test, and it succeeded on that try. So right now my test frequency is set up to be 10 minutes, and the number of internal tests are 3. I'm actually going to go back in and make this every 1 minute. And the same on performance data collection it's going to be every 1 minute as well. Now, the only thing I'm not going to get because my run as account does not have permissions, I'm not going to get the rich performance data that I might have otherwise gotten. So let me go ahead and click Next here. And I'll create this. And what it's doing now, it's going off and it's adding this to the management pack that I selected. This can take a little bit of time in production. We've got over 300 management packs there. All right. And once it's fully registered with Operations Manager, it will display in my list now of web app availability monitoring. So while we're waiting for that, let me show you some of the data that you may see once you've configured this for yourself. So I'll go ahead and show you a detailed list. So this is one of the reports that you can get out of web app availability monitoring that will show you whether it's successful or failing, and then some of the performance statistics. You can see total transaction time, time to first byte, time to last byte, and content size. And then for each of the unique URLs that I've added, you can go ahead and select them so that you can compare and contrast for each of those unique URLs. In addition, because you've added location, you can actually see a summary dashboard, and if that other location had added just a moment ago, you would be able to see another location lit up with either a success or failure from the test that we created from there. Once you go ahead and select the check mark, then it shows the test status, the date of the last sample time, and the transaction response time. So that's web app availability monitoring. Next, I want to show you some of the dashboarding that you can create leveraging the new Operations Manager. Pardon. You can see here actually my test SM12 service catalog did finally add. And if I were to go over to the monitoring tab, scroll up, under application monitoring, web app availability, I can click on that. And it hasn't run yet. I did specify every 1 minute, so it should run at some point here. What I do want to show you is creating dashboards. Creating dashboards in Operations Manager 2007 R2 wasn't exactly straightforward. You basically had to create a bunch of views, organize them in a similar folder, and then create another custom view and add all those other views to it. So it wasn't very intuitive, and they've made some great improvements in 2012. If you right-click on a folder and select New, you can create a new dashboard view. So the first step in the wizard asks you to select a layout or widget template. The column layout and the grid layout allow you to build custom dashboards with any number of widgets associated. The service level dashboard and the summary dashboard are already pre-configured with the available data. You configure them with the necessary parameters, and then it displays. For the purposes of this demo, I'll go through and select a grid layout. And this will be grid S. I can add a description if I like. And then I can select the number of cells in the dashboard. I can go all the way up to 9 cells. Or I can go 4 cells and select a particular layout template. For this, I'm going to just go with 2 cells, and I'll use the top and the bottom. Select Next, and then hit Create. At this point, again, it's going out and it's creating this in the MP, and then it's reloading the MP. So here it is. It's empty right now because I haven't added any widgets to it. But if I go ahead and click to Add Widget, I now have a list of widgets that I can add. I can add an alert widget to see what alerts are firing for all of Operations Manager, or I can narrow it down to a specific number of machines or a group. I can look at a details widget, which actually for an alert or for a state will display the details of that particular alert or state. We've got objects by performance, which gives you sort of a top-end count with some graphical representation, and then performance and state. For this, I'm going to just do a simple widget. So we'll do a state widget. And this will be we'll go ahead and call it Operation Manager State. And then we'll go ahead and add. So I can add groups, or I can actually specify unique objects to go after. In this case, I'm going to add a group. So I'll go ahead and add our OM12 group. And then I'll click Next. And then I can select to limit the criteria to only display those with errors or warnings. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to display everything. I'll go ahead and click Next. I can add some sorting to it. I can add an icon or a maintenance mode indicator. For this, I'll use the basic. And then I'll hit Create. Okay, so this was successfully created. And you can see now I've got my list of servers and the state that they're in. You can see I've got a couple in warning state, but most are healthy. So I'm going to go ahead and add a widget down below here that gives me the details. So I'll grab the details widget. copy state details. And then I will create that and close that out. So now, if I select a machine above, give it a moment, it will, when it's done loading, display the details of this particular server state so that I don't have to right-click and go into Health Explorer to see some of the basic details. You can see that health is success. It's going to show me the IP, the domain it's in, number of processors, all that's available in Operations Manager. So that's how you go about creating a dashboard. Some of the other dashboards, I mentioned that there was a service level dashboard. This is an example of the service level dashboard. It gives you an indication of where you are relative to the SLA that you've created in Operations Manager. If you go ahead, you can select any number of the machines, and it will display how that machine is working against the SLA that was created. When you create these dashboards, you're able to specify a time frame, so you can look over a matter of hours, days, or weeks. So that's creating dashboards and web app availability monitoring. Now let's go back to our slides. All right. So we talked a lot about Operations Manager. We leverage Operations Manager and Service Manager very heavily. We've used Virtual Machine Manager now going on about a year for a lot of our lab work, so a lot of our test instances. With the 2012 version or System Center 2012, we're not only using it for our lab, we're now using Virtual Machine Manager as we go to production. We're using 2008 R2 in production right now, mainly because we're leveraging a service within Microsoft that provides VMs, production-capable VMs, to others at Microsoft. We're doing this because we're able to leverage some of their scale. They have a very large footprint in 2 different data centers. They're spinning up a 3rd data center. And so we're able to actually fail over and live migrate between sites. One of the biggest benefits of why we're choosing to use VMM proved itself as I was having a conference call with one of the gentlemen that run the service. All of a sudden, our service catalog went down, and our service catalog was running on VMs. It was hosted by their solution. It happened to be that the network device on that particular host for that connection had gone down. And as I was on the phone with him, within minutes, he was able to live migrate me to a different machine, and I was up and running within minutes. We see a lot of benefit in moving to VMM for our services and hosting our services. As for where they're headed, they are testing out VMM 2012. They've got a very large infrastructure they support, so they're looking to incorporate that later this year. But for the moment, they are on 2008 R2. Next, service delivery and automation. As we look at automation using Orchestrator, our service has a lot of different challenges in regards to automation. We've got a lot of manual tasks today. We've got a lot of tasks that incorporate people, process, and technology. There's approvals necessary. And then managing the day-to-day of 7,000 servers and innovating with respect to our service is very hard. Some of the key benefits that we're looking to leverage with Orchestrator 2012 are its integration with Service Manager, the ability to link runbooks to an activity to automatically process service requests. I can't wait to get to this point so that when we're onboarding new servers to our service, it's not a manual process. It's somebody cutting a ticket and then everything happening in the background. In addition to that integration, tight linkage with Service Manager, the new web console based on Silverlight is a great improvement over the previous Apalis version. Now, what are we looking to target with Orchestrator? With Orchestrator, like I said, I'd love to be able to get to a point where our onboarding and decommissioning of servers from our service is all handled with Orchestrator, where it's cutting a ticket for either adding or removing servers, and the agent installs or removals are happening automatically, or perhaps ops manager agent dual homing. Next would be our operational readiness. In the 2007 R2 operations manager side, we did have problems with agent health. We're not necessarily seeing as much problem with agent health, but ensuring that agent health stays high and gets better is another one of those areas that I'd like to target with Orchestrator. And then lastly, just password updates. Having password updates be manual is very frustrating. It should be something that happens every time and every time the right way, but when there's a human involved, it doesn't always happen. All right, how are we going about implementing Orchestrator? Now, what we did is we went and mapped out the network that we support. We ran ping tests to all the different servers that we have agents on, that we need to get to be able to perform actions on using Orchestrator. What we found is the majority of the servers that we reach are all within about 100 milliseconds of our primary data centers. We've got 3 very large data centers that are all within 30 milliseconds of each other. So the way that we'll implement this is we'll be putting our database and management server and runbook server in the primary in one data center, and then runbook servers in each of these 2 other data centers. And then the rest of those machines in those data centers will all be target servers. We had some question as far as whether or not servers outside of about 100 milliseconds we'd be able to effectively reach those. We did run some testing and found that we were actually able to reach all of those servers and perform actions on them using Orchestrator. However, if there's drop packets or bad dirty network connection, you'll find that actually is the biggest blocker as opposed to latency. Latency didn't seem to matter too much. So this is how we're building out. It's all going to be on VMs. We'll have an Orchestrator web console, a database, and then another Orchestrator management runbook server in that primary data center. And then we'll have an Orchestrator runbook server in each of those other 2 primary data centers. We're spanning across some untrusted domains, so we're using SQL Server authentication, not Windows, for those. But this is how we plan on rolling out Orchestrator. So we've now talked about Operations Manager, we've talked about Virtual Machine Manager, and some about Orchestrator. Now, as we roll all these out, we're suddenly gathering a lot of data. We're creating a lot of data, and where's that data going to go? It's going to go to Service Manager. And now I'd like to invite Jim Livingston up on stage to talk to you a little bit about how we're using Service Manager.
Thank you, Charlie. Let me see where get the next one here. All right, I'm going to spend the rest of the session talking about Service Manager, how we plan the implementation. But just to get a feeling of the audience, how many people are running Service Manager in their environment? Well, maybe a quarter of you. That's kind of typical. So I'll cover both what we're doing with Service Manager at Microsoft and also how we manage the migration from Service Manager 10 to Service Manager 12. Talk about validating the connectors and the management packs and all the code, and we have fair amount of custom code, custom workflows, and how all that worked. Planning for the service catalog, which is the big change in Service Manager, the big improvement with SM12. A little bit of our implementation with OM. Charlie's covered some of that, but I'll go into it in more detail. And then using cubes for reporting. Again, another big new feature in Service Manager 12 is a comprehensive reporting capability where you can do self-service reporting with cubes. So here's our environment. The first thing you'll notice from this slide is, since I'm an SM guy, I put SM in the middle. You notice all Charlie's slide had OM in the middle, so that's the fundamental difference between our two slides. And then I put OM on the outside. So we have 6 separate unique OM environments. Those all come in through connectors, and all those alerts come into Service Manager 24 hours a day. Up in your upper left, or your upper right, my left, is a custom database that we build and design ourselves called Ops Lite. And it's basically asset management. So we are a multi-partner environment, and we have to know, whether this computer or the alert from this computer came from Microsoft.com, or is it Windows Update, or which one of our partners. So that database tells us what application it is associated for that computer, who are the support engineers, what are the knowledge base articles associated with that alert. And so that's where that information comes in. And I'll talk about how we integrate that into Service Manager. We use the Exchange connector. So in Service Manager, we take alerts both from mail, from the portal, or manually from the console, or from OM. The bulk of our alerts obviously come from Operations Manager, but they can come from all sources. I'll do a demo of the user portal, and then we do AD connectors. That's how all of the users who use Service Manager are defined to the system. So validating management packs. So the first piece of good news is all our management packs for SM10, I believe we had about 24 of them. We imported them into SM12, and they all just worked. And so that was pretty straightforward. We do extensions to incident class, user class, and computer class. Those extensions primarily store that asset information that gets imported in from our Ops Lite database. And so as we planned for and started making the migration to SM12, the things that were different were we wanted to reorganize how our views worked, so those need to be reworked. A number of our workflows, we spent some time optimizing and trying to reduce the number of workflows in the system. We had gotten up to close to 100 different workflows. We dropped that down to closer to 24, which we think is a better, more performant model. We had to redo our templates. So again, most of the changes in views and templates were because we had implemented service requests in SM10 using incidents, and that all had to move to the new service request type that's in SM12. So it wasn't so much that you had to make changes, is that we had to re-architect how we had done things since we had done a service request system in SM10. I mentioned reducing the number of workflows. That would be a suggestion I would make to you, is check your workflows. It's very easy for administrators to create workflows, and they solve a lot of problems, routing problems, notification problems, or notifications, and it can get out of hand easily, and it does put quite a load on the system, especially if they're not designed, because they, in some cases, can fire with every single alert that comes in the system. Things that just worked, we use roles to specify, so that's, you set up roles so only certain people see certain views. We have a number of unique tasks in the right-hand panel, and that were there, and all the lists and all the subscriptions, that stuff all just worked. It gets imported with the management pack and just worked fine. And then the AD connector, there's a really good improvement in the SM12 where you can now specify groups. And so we typically have a group for each one of our partners. And so as people come and go, service engineers come and go, AD automatically just takes care of that for us. So development work required. Again, the good news is all of our code that we had built for SM10 just worked on SM12. I've been in data processing a long time, and I never find code just works on the new release. But it actually did. It all compiled and just worked. So the areas we needed to improve or redesign, the first was our sync service. So the sync service is the service that we built that imports the data from our OpsDB, our asset system, into Service Manager. And we had found over time, as we had grown our usage of the system and the volume of the system, is that sync service was putting an undue load on the system. And so we re-optimize it so that it brings in updates less frequently. Some updates were coming more frequent than others. We basically just redesigned the system so it put a smaller load on the system. The incident processing program, which is a workflow, that's how when every alert comes in, the incident processing workflow fires and basically goes and looks up that information. So kind of at a high level, when an alert comes in from computer 10, we look up, we say, oh, computer 10 is associated with this application. It has these support engineers. It knows the knowledge base articles that it's assigned to, and it knows the notification mechanism that the partner wants. Some of our partners want email. Some of our partners just want it routed into a support group, and they have support engineers watching it. Some want both, and we're actually even adding telephone service so that they'll get phone calls for certain alerts. And so that's pretty much what, incident processing is kind of the heart of our system. So an alert comes in, we know that information. And the design there was so that the support engineers, in most cases they're vendors, when they look at an alert, they have everything they need. They know who the owner is, they know what application it came from, they know what support engineer to escalate to, and there's a knowledge base article in the related items. They open that up, and then they start following the tasks. And as Charlie had mentioned, our SLA for Tier 1, for those vendors, is 15 minutes. They either solve the problem in 15 minutes or have it routed to another queue or send email off to somebody. So a level 2 engineer or level 3 engineer is working on it. We tend to be a very email-centric organization, and so we built a thing called Send Outlook Mail, which allows the support engineer to get a copy of the alert, incident information, throws it into Outlook, allows him to do some pre-formatting. He can select a template that'll pre-populate information for it, and then when it's sent, a copy of that email is recorded in the event log, in the action log of the IR. So we keep, and that email thread is kept there. So if the support engineer replies back and say, here, try these steps, that's all recorded in the history and in the action log. And that's been very successful for us, but that's all custom work that we had to add. And Exchange Connector 3.0 has some good improvements in it for reliability and tracking, and so we're on Exchange Connector 3.0. So I mentioned some redesigns we did to our workflows so that the incident processing workflow, when we originally designed it, we did implement it in a fairly standard way, so it just fired and ran as a program on a workflow. And if you do some high-capacity planning on the workflows, a couple hundred most workflows can only handle about 200 processes in a minute. And we can see floods of alerts coming into our system that will get up to 200 to 300 to 400 alerts coming into our system in a minute. And so our workflows weren't handling all those. And so we redesigned the incident processing workflow to be a web service so that the workflow became very light. So basically, the workflow comes in, it fires, and it just puts a message on the queue saying, here's an IR you need to go process, and then the web service will look up the different information, fill it all out, and route it to the necessary queue. There can be a delay in there of 10 to 15 seconds, but we were able to handle the floods of alerts when they come in, and those alerts didn't get timed. The number of times alerts, workflows timed out went way down, and that was an improvement. Also, we're seeing in SM12 that the workflow architecture is more robust, and workflows tend to time out quite a bit less. I mentioned we had to replace so we add this new service catalog and implement the new service request type. And we added dynamic routing. So this is unique to our environment. When you're trying to process, 3,000 alerts a day going out to 10 different partners, we wanted to automate that as much as possible. And I have a session on Wednesday where I'll drill into more details on this, and I explain how we built it and how the routing works. But that's been an important feature for us. Okay. So let me drill a little more on dynamic routing. So when an alert comes in, what our partners wanted to be able to do on certain alerts, either event ID or event source, descriptions, computer name, asset information, just automatically route the alert to their support group. So teams would look at their alerts, their pattern of alerts, and say, these types of alerts just get to me immediately. Or these type of alerts, just go ahead and send me email and route them to another support queue. So most teams have multiple support queues. So they can kind of prioritize, what alerts are coming in, what alerts are doing differently. It's also been a nice solution for what I call informational alerts. So we have a number of teams, particularly when they're testing systems, want to get a lot of alerts, but they're not really actionable. They're certainly not actionable for the tier 1 people. They haven't written TSGs for them. And so they use the routing to just route those alerts immediately to another support group, and then they can look at them at their leisure and whatnot. That's been very successful in letting the different separate teams manage their alerts. Do we distribute that management out? It has created a side effect that's been a problem, is it doesn't incent people to clean up their management packs. And if they've implemented fairly noisy management packs, which I'm sure many of you have experienced, those will all come in as lots and lots, tens of thousands of alerts in the Service Manager. To solve that problem, we use PowerShell and run workflows a couple times a day and auto groom out alerts that are depending on the support group that they're in. We'll get rid of alerts sometimes in as quick as 4 or 5 days, where a typical alert that somebody acted on, we typically keep about 15 days. And so that allows us to groom out and keep the total volume of alerts in the system down to a more reasonable level. And in our implementation, a reasonable level is staying below 100,000. We found in SM10, we got up to 180,000 at one point. I think it was back over last Christmas, and that was a pretty big load on SM10. We think SM12 will be able to get up to closer to 200,000, but we try to keep that number down because it just keeps things more performant. It's also better for reporting. So, Service Catalog. Here's where I spent most of my time with SM12. And step 1 was explaining this to people. We had an existing service request portal that we had built, and we were going to migrate off that and retire that. And so it had about 400 service request types. And basically, envision somebody goes in, they pick an application, and they pick a subtype under that application and a particular service request. And a service request in Microsoft is either reporting a problem or submitting a request for a change. And so they would do that. And so we've been using a service request type solution in Microsoft for years, and we had all these existing definitions. And so the first thing I did was create a little, pilot service catalog and went around to people and show them. And you could just tell the light bulb didn't go on. It was hard for them to comprehend what were these service offerings and request offerings and the question types. And a lot of people just said, well, I kind of just like the old way. It was working fine. I said, well, we're migrating to the new way. So what I did is we wrote some PowerShell scripts to unload the existing set of data definitions and loaded that into the service catalog. And then I went back to everybody and I say, here's your definitions that you're currently using, and see how I created service offerings and request offerings from all that. And then the light bulb went on. And a lot of teams said, oh, I see. We have a new capability to organize requests and to make them easier and make them more efficient. And so most of the team sat down with the spreadsheet and reorganized their offerings. And then I uploaded them back, and they could look at them and say, yeah, that's as closer to what I want. So we used the new service catalog to get teams to really reorganize and rethink through how do you want your requests to come in. We're about 90% implemented with most of the teams migrated on the catalog. And the big bang for the buck we're getting is, and you'll see from the demo, the new service catalog, yeah, you got it. The new service catalog increases the chance that a person selects the right thing. If we look back at our old system, the Tier 1, Tier 2 teams that would handle those requests said they averaged 5 emails back to the requester getting more information. And we've cut that way, way down with the new service catalog. So a better chance that the requester selected the request through the right thing, answered the right questions, filled out the form, and sent it in. And then the secondary benefit is the people then had the right information. They didn't have to send those 5 emails and could provide the service more quickly and more cheaply. So it's a win-win. The requesters could get a better request in, and they get their request serviced more rapidly. And this has been a really nice side benefit of the new service catalog. Let me see. So I covered everything on here. Oh, let me touch on self-help articles. A couple things we're starting to move forward on is built in, and you'll see it in the demo, you can actually have help articles associated with each service request. And one common thing I heard from most of the support teams is, hey, when people send me this request, they always get it wrong. They don't understand what they're asking for, and they don't understand what we need to do. And so they write help articles basically saying, hey, if you're submitting this request, read this article first. And so they're, again, trying to prove the quality of the requests. So, picture's worth 1,000 words. It's 4, right? So here's our service catalog or service portal. Do I have the mouse? Okay. It challenged me for the next bit. So the first thing you'll notice is there's descriptions. Oops. What did you just do? Back up. Excuse me. So there's descriptions associated with each one. So you just hover over and you'll get that description if I click into it. Currently implemented, we have, I think, once we're completely implemented, we will have about 80 service offerings. So these top-level icons are, in the new SM12 terminologies, are the service offerings. We will have about 80 service offerings. We have one team, Microsoft.com, that migrates next week, I believe. So you can come in here and select any of these, get your descriptions. You select the service offering, and then that'll give you the list of request offerings underneath. So this was the case where when a lot of teams saw this capability, they went, oh, I want to reorganize how my things will work. Oh, thank you. And they could use the spreadsheet to organize things under service offerings and then what requests are under. So it was more logical, and it made more sense to the people submitting them. So I'll do monitor port connection request. And see, here's where you would have the associated help articles. As I said, we're just starting to roll out those. And I go create the request. And it's called user input in SM terms, but basically it's the list of questions. You notice there where it's red, it's the title. It's required. So you can have lists. So you select your priority, business justification. Select answer, and this is actually one of my ideas. If you have a list like this, the first one on the list is the default, and if you can make it required, but since it's got a default selected, they could just blow past it. So I use select answer to try to force people. Basically, I say pull down the list and select something here. Don't just go past it. Change. What type of monitoring do you want? Next, more questions, and then a summary page. And I could go back and update that, and I won't hit submit because this is actually our production system, and some support engineer will wonder what the heck Jim Livingston is doing submitting this goofy request. So back to the home page. So this is highly configurable. The size of these are web parts. The font size, so you see how many questions you got on the page. Those are all configurable, very easy to do. Your right-hand panel, those are URL links. You can add more URL links, so it's quite configurable. The product team, I think, did a really nice job with that. So let me go back to the home page. Notice how quickly it loaded. That's pretty fast, at least in my opinion, it's pretty fast. And you'll notice we've used keys for all of these. So I'll share my experience with you. When we originally did it, we built the spreadsheet so that partners could select their own icons. And many of the teams had very interesting multiple different icons, again, to try to make it more graphically better for people to find the right request. And we find the load time was substantial. We were running about 10 to 12 seconds to load this initial page. And pretty much without exception, all of the teams said, I'd rather have it fast. It doesn't need to be all that pretty. And so I'm working with the product group to try to solve that, open a DCR change request form so we can use icons. But the key is actually not an icon. That's the default if you don't select icons. And we've gone to that throughout, at least in the original implementation, basically for performance. We're doing time. So, last topic is reporting with cubes. And for those of you who built or used SM10, I'll politely say that the reporting in SM10 was somewhat limited. The cubes have worked really well for us. They're a little complicated. There's definitely a learning curve. I would say a couple of our teams, the support engineers, were just experienced with cubes. One-hour training session, they were off and running and they were great. But the bulk of our customers have found the cubes a little complicated. And so what we did to solve that problem is we created a lot of sample cubes, basically of the types of reports that they want, had built a training class that said, here you select these different items, and you pivoted on it this way, you select that to get users and whatnot. We did have to build our own cube, and that took a couple of months of dev work. The reason we had to build our own cube is calculations based on properties that are not built into the system. And an example is like status. We add a lot of status fields like hold, waiting for customer response, and things like that. And our reports, the TTR, time to resolve, needed to subtract that time. And so if you have that kind of complex type reporting, you have to build a custom cube yourself to take those calculations into account. And so basically that was the main reason to do it. We also added drill downs so you can see the asset map, and you can drill down so you can, Microsoft.com, and you can drill into it and get whatever level of application, see how many IRs are associated with it. You can drill down by support engineers into the cube, calendars. So basically you can have a cube that will give you a range, a date range, an application range, what support engineers worked on it, and boom, you're looking at it. So, unlike SM10, we're seeing managers of the support teams are able to bring up cubes and get a very quick, high-level view of what they wanted, what their teams are doing, and then they could drill in, to see what's happening. Measures, incidents, tier queues are the main things that we did. We did use the built-in fact tables, and so that's one of the reasons we're finding the cubes are a little more complicated than you would want them, because the built-in facts tables, there's about 24 of them, and it makes it a little confusing as to what things to select. In my session on Wednesday, I'll do a demo of the cube, and you'll kind of see how all that works. But initially, the cubes have worked out to be a good distributed reporting solution, so you can just turn over to teams and say, hey, once you get used to your cubes, produce whatever reports you want, pull down the data that you want. That's all I have. I think I'll turn it back to Charlie.
All right. So, in review, our experience, we've seen improved system health and performance on both the ops manager side and the service manager side. Our agent health status, we're consistently at 99% or above for our ops manager agent health. We now have that high availability out of the box with the removal of the RMS role. And then the service manager console performance has been greatly improved, going from 2010 to 2012. So what features are proving useful? The ops manager dashboards, we've been using those internally within our team, and we will be exposing those to our customers as we roll out our instance-based operations manager per customer. Next, the web availability monitoring, we've been using that within our team. We'll be exposing that to all our customers as we roll out that instance-based, so that they have that exposure to the console and they can add those tests quickly. Next, as Jim reviewed the service manager catalog, has been a great improvement over the custom solution we had previously put in place, and our customers have received it fairly well. And lastly, those cubes that will allow us to hopefully get out of the report creation business have been useful. There's been a little bit of complication with them just because it's an education process on training folks on how to use cubes, but we see that as our way forward. Now, what's next for us? Like I said, we're going to be implementing an instance of Operations Manager per customer, and we'll be scaling that up with VMs. We'll be able to leverage APM with our customers then. They'll be leveraging dashboards. They'll be leveraging the web app availability monitoring. And then as far as Service Manager features, we're looking at the change management and release management features, which we have yet to explore, but we're looking to implement those for our customers. We'll have a continued orchestrator investment, and then we'll continue to look at how we can continue to move towards the application management pillar. As we continue to grow the maturity of our business, our focus is to try and get to a point where we are a lot more automated, a lot more self-service than we are today. And System Center 2012 can get us there. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions. I'm sorry. Can you? So I believe that'll be available online.
Yeah, I think you get a CD at the end of the session, which was a recording of all the sessions, and I believe all the PowerPoints are there too.
Yes. Yes. So we're just starting the pilot of that. They will be separate. They won't be connected to each other. We are looking at leveraging Orchestrator to manage some of the consistency between them as far as some of the base management packs. But then we're looking to develop a custom MP to be able to monitor those other Operation Manager instances. Yes. Yes.
We'll want one.
Yes.
Yeah. What we're working at is to try to reduce the cost. Our team has to manage all of the different environments to try to make them as similar as possible. But in some cases, teams want separate OM environments because they want to do things differently than our standard, what we call our shared environment. So that's part of the planning we're in.
Yep. We have one at the mic, and then I'll go right over to you.
Yeah, real quick. I know you guys mentioned that OpsLite is a custom DB. Have you guys done a white paper or anything, best practices around that to expose that to the public?
I don't believe we've done a white paper on that.
Yeah, we don't have a white paper. OpsDB is just a SQL database with a Silverlight application front end that allows people to manage their asset information, add computers to the system, change support engineers, change articles.
Thanks.
Yeah. And so we've run some testing, but our testing didn't have a full number of our full environment. So we haven't experienced that failover in production yet. So I don't have an answer for you on that. Yes. 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 So it's basically an uninstall the 2007 agent, install 2012, and then multi-home.
Yeah.
So as far as the VMs we're spinning up, they're 4-proc VMs running on Windows Server 2008 R2 Hyper-V. I think our management server VMs have 16 gigs of RAM. Our gateways, I think we're running at 8 gigs. And then that's all within the virtual environment. Then we've got physical gateways in the remote data centers. Anything else? Sorry if I can't see you, the lights are a little bright.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned the gateway servers saw higher priority traffic.
Yeah. So as far as the latency of alerts getting back to or getting written to the database in SCOM, we saw a higher priority as far as the gateway to management server traffic than we did direct agent to management server. The management server seemed to give higher priority of network traffic to that gateway. Anything else? Yeah. I believe so. I'd have to check with my engineering team, but I can get back to you on that. I'd have to check with the engineer on that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see any problem. I mean, the nice thing about the dual homing is we could have all of our, all the agents reporting back into OM7 and SM10, and as we do it, but we had all the alerts going into the new environment. So we basically got to capacity test and test everything and all our workflows with all of those alerts coming in before any engineer was even seeing them and whatnot. So in terms of a migration technology, it worked terrific, and it also greatly improved the testing we were able to do, because typically if you just test in a test environment, the types of alerts you get is really small compared to production.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of the purpose of Service Manager is to have a central CDB where you're doing everything. Are you looking to migrate from your OpsLight over to Service Manager and do more there, or are you going to keep that separate function?
So the question is, why do we have this separate OpsLight technology? And it was actually built about the same time that SM10 came out, so somewhat it was just the timing. And you're right, we actually could take all that data, store it in Service Manager, and then use the capability of the console to do that. We would get some pushback on it because the Silverlight application that's used for managing it is very light and quick, and the console is a little heavier. Plus, direct access works for the Silverlight application, so people don't have to be corporate connected. They can just run it from home. Another big requirement is, since many of our support teams are 24/7, people are often getting these alerts at home late at night and want to just immediately act on them. But you're right, architecturally there's no reason we couldn't integrate it, and we're looking at redesigning it again in 2013.
Part of it's security reasons. We've got a variety of different external properties that we monitor in between Windows Update, Microsoft Update, and Microsoft.com, MSDN, and TechNet. You really don't want them stomping on each other. I mean, we could do some things with roles, but it becomes a bit of a management challenge. The other aspect is because we have so many servers reporting through that single management group, the performance of the console can be a little slow at times. And so to lighten that up and allow them to focus on just their app monitoring in that, so that's one thing I maybe didn't mention or make clear. We'll be doing base monitoring still through our shared infrastructure, so all the OS hardware, SQL, that sort of thing. We'll be doing that through our shared infrastructure. We're really lighting up these other SCOM instances so that our teams can focus just on their app. So they're developing custom MPs for their app, using web app availability monitoring, using APM. That's why we're doing it. Yes.
That's
Yes.
our plan.
That's the plan.
Keep one service manager. That gives you one central reporting database that can have everything in it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? So we currently have, what, 8 or 9 different SCOM instances
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
feeding into our single Service Manager.
Yeah,
instance
actually,
today.
the Service Manager 12 can have OM7 and OM12 connectors simultaneously, and you can have many of them. The connectors are one of the strengths. I mean, it's very easy to set them up, and they work extremely well.
Anyone else?
Everybody about done for the
Oh,
day?
oh,
No,
sorry.
we got
we got
more.
one back there.
The dashboard, looking through the documentation, I don't think I saw that. Is that out of the box functionality? Does it require like a Visio add-in?
No, that's out of the box. Just right-click.
Configure the PowerShell scripts?
So in configuring those PowerShell, that is out of the box. If you look on TechNet, I believe they have documentation there on how to configure that.
Yeah,
So if you open up the PowerShell and then just do a get dash command, it's somewhat intuitive, some of the naming conventions, and then just do a get help on that. I mean, I had to do it before they had documentation, so that's kind of how I did it.
Yes.
Would that be in the operations guide?
I'm sorry?
Would that be in the operations guide?
It may be. I don't have the link in front of me, but I know that it's out there.
Yeah, I know for Service Manager, it's under TechNet Codeplex, and the called SMLits, and there's a whole lot of commands, and we use them a lot for creating workflows and monitoring our system and whatnot. Basically, it allows you to do in PowerShell, a lot of things that you could do in the console. Question over here.
Yes. So you can associate that. So you're associating that to an agent or a management server or a gateway. But as far as how it's used, I believe the only location right now is in the web app availability. Anything else? So we did notice a little bit of a performance improvement. However, we actually, since we reduced the overall number of servers that we have actively managing it, I was running off of one of those management servers. And any performance improvement that we had been seeing is now negated by the fact that it's just, we're really, we've got a lot of agents reporting through just 3 servers. It's handling the load just fine. It's just that the console performance becomes a little chunky. Anything else? So we don't charge our customers on a per MP or in working with them on helping them get their monitoring set up. Our charging is more on tier 1 escalations, and it's a shared infrastructure cost as far as the ops manager and service manager footprint, and then the vendors that we have to support that. To answer your question, we have service requests that come in all the time, but there's no price associated with that. No. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, all the partners are Microsoft people, so it's basically cost recovery.
Yeah.
So we just divide our costs and spread it out on our partners based on their volume of alerts.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty straightforward pricing model. All right, well, thank you very much,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.